Hello, good morning. How's everybody doing today? This is Rich Harshaw. We're here for our weekly webinar, and we're going to talk about the psychology of marketing today. And the reality is, if you have any hope of being good at marketing at all, you really have to understand human nature first and foremost. And human nature really has a lot to do with psychology. So if you want to get good at marketing, you have to understand psychology. So what I've done here today, and we will continue this next month, it's a two-part webinar simply because there's too much stuff to cover in one webinar. So I've kind of broken it down into two so we can spend a little bit of time on some of these principles. But I've grabbed some interesting observations of psychology from marketing, and I've put them into a webinar. So I think we've got, what do we have today? I think we've got, thin slicing, trusted advisor, confirmation bias, scarcity, authority, low risk, and something for nothing. These are the concepts that we're going to cover today. And next time I'll show you at the end of the webinar, we'll cover some additional topics that are also equally as interesting and fun. But these are the ones we want to go through today. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump in and let's start talking about some psychology of marketing. First one I want to talk about is first impressions. And there's a book called Blink. Obviously, it's on your screen here. And let me make sure that my technology is all working the way it's supposed to. I think it is, but let me just double check. Okay, it is. So here's what happened. You see this book. It's called Blink by Malcolm Gladwell. Just a little backstory about this guy, Malcolm Gladwell. He wrote a book, gosh, I think it's going back to the 90s now, called The Tipping Point. And you see there on the actual cover of this book, it says author of The Tipping Point. Well, this was his first book, and he became very famous over this book. It was a book that talks about little things that make a big difference, that sort of tip the scales to make some outcome happen. A very entertaining book, easy to read, interesting book. And he became quite famous. And as he became quite famous with his book, he started doing the speaking rounds. And he went in and gave speeches to big corporate audiences. And these, of course, paid a lot of money. And he became well known. And throughout that whole process, he really kind of got out of his comfort zone and into this corporate limelight. Well, after that sort of played itself out after a few years, he decided he would go back to New York City, where he's from, and he would take some time off. And he wanted to be alone and think and have a chance to write, find new concepts. And he was searching for concepts for his next book. And I think by this point he's written 4 or 5 books, but this was now going on his second book. He was in the streets of New York City, and a van pulled up next to him. And a bunch of guys jumped out, threw him in the van, closed the door, and drove off. He was accosted. And turns out he was accosted by the police. Well, he was trying to figure out, of course, what is he being accosted for by the police? Well, during the time when he was taking time off and looking for ideas for his next book, he had grown his hair out long because he liked to have long hair. If you Google Malcolm Gladwell on the internet, you will see that he's got quite the hairdo going there. He's kind of, I think if I recall properly, his background is he's half something like Jamaican and half white. So he has sort of this interesting look about him, but he has sort of this afro thing that he can grow out. So he had grown that out, and he found out when he got down to the police station that he matched the description of somebody that they were looking for in connection with a rape. And he found out that, of course, he explained who he was and that he was not the rapist, and his alibi or whatever checked out, I guess. Hang on just one second. Excuse me. There is just no good way to sneeze on a webinar. Anyway, so he checked out, and he found out that he looked nothing like the rapist that they were looking for. He was much shorter. The rapist was much heavier, but he had the same hairdo. He had the same hairdo, this big, long, sort of almost afro-looking long hair, very very distinctive looking hairdo. And he thought, wow, this is amazing that because of this one element of my appearance, I would be mistaken for a rapist and accosted by the police in connection with this crime. And he started thinking about it, and he said to himself, you know, when I grew my hair out, I shouldn't have been so surprised, because he noticed that after his hair was grown out, he would be singled out more regularly for security checks at the airport. He also found that he was getting pulled over more when he was driving. And he was just treated with more suspicion when he had this longer hair than when he had short hair. I was talking to my friend David last week, who in the last year or so has grown out a big, huge, full beard, like a big old beard, not a Duck Dynasty beard, but a pretty big beard. And I was talking to him about it, and he said, you know, when you have a beard, you just get treated different. People pay attention to the guy with the beard, this one thing. Now, why am I telling you about long hair and telling you about beards? Well, this book called Blink comes from this experience, and he realized that the police were making extraordinarily important decisions based on very, very little information. And he started to research this topic, and he came up with this concept called thin slicing. I'm going to put a definition on the screen for you here. Here's what it is. Thin slicing is our ability to gauge what is really important from a very narrow period of experience. In other words, spontaneous decisions are often as good or even better than carefully planned and considered ones. In what Gladwell contends is an age of information overload, he finds that experts often make better decisions with staff judgments than they do with volumes of analysis. Now, that might seem somewhat counterintuitive given the fact that he was incorrectly identified as a rapist and accosted by the police. But as he studied this phenomenon called thin slicing, making very important decisions with very little information, snap judgments, thin slicing, he started to realize that the reason that as human beings we thin slice is because it almost always serves us well. It's our intuition. It's our first thought. You know, you're taking a test, right? And they always say, go with your first instinct if you're not quite sure. And this is an interesting concept, and it serves us well in marketing. I'm going to give you a couple of ideas of how and why. So first of all, let's go back and look at the reticular activating system, okay? It's the center of attention. It's the attention center in the brain, the center of motivation. It's a complex collection of neurons which serves as a point of convergence for signals from the external world and from the interior environment. In other words, it's the part of your brain where the world outside of you and the thoughts and feelings inside of you meet. Reticular activator is the part of your brain that is on guard looking for elements that are unusual or different, that allows you to pay attention to things that you need to pay attention to and not pay attention to things that don't really require your attention. So give you a couple of examples, and this all going to tie together with this concept of thin slicing. Have you ever bought a car and noticed that everybody else seems to be driving the same make, model, and color as your car? I've recently purchased a new vehicle. It's a black Jeep Grand Cherokee, and it's what's called the Altitude package, which means that it has black wheels, the door handles, and the emblems and everything are all black. So it's an all-black car. It doesn't have any chrome on it like most do. And I got it because I thought it looked kind of cool. You know, whatever. Maybe you think it looks dumb. Whatever. I like it. It's just my car. Who cares, right? But the interesting thing is I've started noticing these all over the place, and they actually make white Jeeps that have the black package, black wheels, black emblems, etc. And they make a couple of other colors. They're more rare, but I see them all over the place. I see them all over the place. This is the reticular activator picking out of all the sea of vehicles on the road, the couple that are familiar and that have some sort of connection to me, because my brain picks it out and says, reticular activator says, hey, check that out. It's the same thing that allows a mother to wake up in the middle of the night when the baby's crying. She's asleep. She hears the baby cry, and a reticular activator hears that even while she's sleeping and says, hey, you better wake up and deal with this, because this guy over here, me, like the husband, right, he's not going to wake up and do anything about it. Meanwhile, the husband hears the baby crying while he's sleeping. Reticular activator captures that even while he's asleep and says to him, hey, don't worry about it. She's going to handle it, right? Hopefully not always, but that's generally how it seems to go. So we've got this reticular activator that is capturing stimuli from outside of you, and it's telling your brain what to do with it. Should it pay attention? Should it take action? And so forth, okay? So with that backdrop, here's what we know. Thin slicing, first impressions. Your reticular activator is going to very quickly allow you to make first impressions about stuff. So, for instance, bigger is better. Ad size, length, duration, and so forth. I've written a blog posting about bigger is better. Now think about this for a second. In the context of thin slicing and reticular activating system, when you see an ad that is big, your brain is going to very quickly ascertain that that is better. At companies that are bigger and stronger and more financial and have more credibility tend to run bigger ads. Is it always true 100% of the time? No. Is it normally true? Yes. How long does it take your brain to figure that out? Answer, 0.00001 seconds. You hear a longer commercial. You see an ad that is bigger, takes up more space, it's repeated more frequently, and so forth. Those are things that say bigger is better. Now, how does that affect your marketing? Well, if you place a little teeny tiny ad, you say, well, this should be enough. People should get the point. They may judge you very quickly to be not as impressive. Can't we have nice things? Okay. Now, let's take a look at the way that your company presents itself in terms of the way that it looks, attitudes, feelings, colors, okay? If you don't present a good image in terms of the way that you look, the way that you feel and treat people, the way that you say things, colors, I'll give you a good example. One of the things that one of my wife's favorite stores is a store called Anthropology. They sell clothes and house goods and stuff that appeals to a certain demographic called my wife and people like her. And one of the elements that she loves about that store is the way that it smells, because they've got these candles that are burning in there, and it's always the same ones, and it smells a certain way, and you walk in there and your brain says, oh, that's good. Here's what I'm trying to say. Your brain is going to be continually making snap decisions about stuff. And if you understand that that is going to happen, you can then put the correct stimuli in place and understand that it's going to make a major difference. This is one of the reasons I hate typical brochures. Most people have seen enough brochures in their lives that they're going to thin slice the brochure and say, this is a bunch of junk that just tries to tell me how great this company is, and it's full of a bunch of platitudes. And they read one or two platitudes on the brochure, and they thin slice and say the whole thing's going to be full of platitudes, and they don't read it. Okay? Think about this stuff. Similarity, gender, age, race. This is a social proof element. I showed you on a webinar not that long ago a picture of Apple, the Apple store, and they had matched up the employees with the customers almost to the T. The older, balding, white-haired, overweight guy had an Apple employee that looked very similar to him, and the middle-aged woman had a middle-aged woman employee, and the younger, hipper guy with the cool glasses had a younger, hipper, cool guy with glasses helping him, and so forth. So think about this. People are going to draw very quick impressions based on what they see and what you present to them. Okay? Next, variety, unusual, different. Things that are unusual and different are going to capture people's attention and signal to that person that, hey, something is worth looking at here. So think about this in terms of advertising and putting things that are unusual or different that cause the person to, when they thin slice and they see that ad, they see that marketing piece, they see that website, instead of saying on a thin slice first impression basis, oh, this is basically the same as everything I've seen or what I expected, they say to themselves it's different, and it snaps them out of a what we call a beta mode, not paying very close attention, to an alpha mode where they've got, I said that backwards, from an alpha mode to a beta mode where they're paying close attention and they're absorbing all the information. Okay, that's thin slicing. You might want to pick up that book by Malcolm Gladwell. It's an interesting read. My opinion, it probably could have been a pamphlet because the concept is pretty easy, but true to Malcolm Gladwell form, he backs everything up with plenty of stories and makes it easy to understand, and he makes it pretty darn interesting. Okay. He's also written a book more recently called David and Goliath, where he talks about the idea of big and small defeating big. And there are a lot of things that a Goliath can do to imitate a David that will allow people to draw conclusions on a thin slicing basis that, hey, this is a company that's bigger, that's more worthwhile, et cetera. Okay, let's move on to the next idea here, which is trusted advisor. Trusted advisor. Now, this is something I want you to think about from a sales and marketing standpoint. If you can present yourself to the customer as instead of saying, here's what we have for sale and what you need to know, putting yourself in the position of an advisor helping them make a decision with really no stake in the ultimate purchase. Okay? Marketing inherently is an activity of trust gathering. So you're trying to gather trust from the customer. You think, no, I'm trying to get a sale. Well, you're not going to get a sale until you get trust. The more you act trustworthy, the more people are going to trust you. It's not something you should fake. What we found is that MYM insists on honesty, integrity, forthrightness, and customer advocacy. And I want you to look at that last phrase there, customer advocacy. Now, let's say that I was a remodeling contractor and I sold windows. Think about this for a minute. There are how many brands of windows out there on the market? And you chose this one or two or three brands that you're going to sell. Why? Why did you choose those 2 or 3 brands instead of the other 100 or 200 or 500 that are out there? And the answer is there's some reason. We don't need to go over it on this call, but there is a reason. So as you go into your marketing campaign and into your sales process, what you're trying to do is you're trying to allow the person to understand your rationale for why you've chosen those windows, why you run your business the way you do, why you install things the way you do, and help them understand not just, hey, we've got the best, but hey, here's what you need to know to understand the best, okay? It's helping people understand. It's facilitating people's decision-making process. It's giving people the information that they need to make a decision and then stepping back and letting them make the decision that makes sense. In our own business, the way that we sell is very, very simple. And this is kind of revealing some things that maybe, are a little uncomfortable since you're my customers, but, whatever. This is how I think everybody should sell. When we sell, we very, very specifically do not talk about what we have for sale. What we do is we go in and we say, here's the principles, and usually our prospective customers have learned the principles through a webinar or a seminar. If they don't have a good enough understanding of the principles, we'll review those principles. We'll help them understand why they're critical and important, and then we'll give them ideas and suggestions for how they can implement those into their business. And we tell our people when we're selling, give the advice, tell them what they should do, help them understand what the best way to get the best results from their marketing is, and then stop and say to them literally, so if I were you, that's what I would do. And I think this is a great way to approach a sales environment or a marketing environment, but I'm talking more specifically about sales now, is to say to somebody, so if I were you, that's what I would do. And then they inevitably have no option but to say, okay, well, so how does that work? How would that work? What can you do to help me achieve that? Can you sell me something to help me achieve that goal? Now, I'm going to shift gears in the example realm here, and I'm going to give you a very easy to understand example, and then we'll bring it back maybe to your company, okay? So the easiest to understand example is walking into a Best Buy store trying to buy a television. And I've done this before, and I've been very, very disappointed because they, generally speaking, don't do a very good job of what I'm about to say. But here's what happens. If you walk into the store looking for a television, you usually know about what size television you're looking for. Let's assume that you don't know much about TVs. You're not an expert. You really haven't studied it that much. You just know you want a good TV, okay? And you walk in, and you've decided that you want something in the range of about 50 inches for whatever reason, okay? 50 inches. So you know what size you want, but you don't really know much else about it. And wouldn't it be great if the clerk would walk you back and say, okay, you're looking for a 50-inch TV. Now tell me why you want a 50-inch TV. Why 50 inches? Where are you going to use it? And you say, well, I'm going to put it in my bedroom. And he says, well, it's kind of a big TV for a bedroom. How big is your bedroom? Well, it's, about this long. Okay, well, that seems more reasonable then. That sounds like a good place for a 50-inch television. Let me ask you this. And he may ask you a few questions about your viewing habits and what kinds of things you watch and under what type of lighting conditions you watch. And are you into movies, or do you just watch network TV? Do you have a DVR? What kinds of things are you trying to accomplish on this TV? How often are you going to watch this TV? And what kind of stereo equipment do you have attached to it? Surround sound, all these kinds of things, to where you can get a feel for what your situation, what your viewing habits are. Do you do gaming on your television? Do you have an Xbox One? What do you do there? And after gathering that information, a sales associate says, okay, well, let me show you what we've got here. We've got about 5 different models. So here they are, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, starting from the lowest price to the highest. Now, this lowest price television, this is what we call a piece of garbage. I wouldn't buy this to save my life. It's only $450, which is very cheap compared to some of these other ones, but you're going to get what you pay for. And here's why I wouldn't buy it, because of X, Y, and Z. Don't buy that. I wouldn't buy it. I could never let somebody walk out of the store here in good conscience with that TV. I'm really not sure why we even sell it. Now, that leaves 4. On the highest end, we've got this TV here, and it's $1,300 or $3,000 or whatever dollars. And this is one that's going to be more appropriate for people that have these kinds of viewing and usage habits, that are looking for this kind of an experience. And based on what you've said, that doesn't sound like you. So yes, this TV is awesome. Yes, you could buy it. Yes, it's going to cost you a lot of money, but I don't really see that as being necessary, which leaves us these 3 models. Now, this model is this, and you go in. Just going through it, I don't need to go through every TV, but you get the idea. Now, based on what you've told me, I would probably go with this one here at $899 or this one here at $799. They're both great TVs. This one at $899 has this advantage, which may not actually be that important to you, but it's nice to have that if you do decide to, whatever. So it's really kind of up to you. Do you want to spend the extra $100 and get this extra feature, or do you want to just go with this one? Those are the 2 that I would recommend. And by the end of that discussion, you're going to walk out with whichever TV they told you to buy, because you feel like this person has been open and honest with you, and that you can trust their opinion because they've taken that time to facilitate your decision-making process. I watched a video online yesterday about how to buy a gun safe. And I'm really actually only very marginally interested in getting a gun safe, thinking about getting a couple of rifles, 22 for my kids to shoot, and a hunting rifle. I'm just thinking about it a little bit. I haven't even committed to it. But I saw this video as I was looking on YouTube about some of that kind of stuff, and I saw this video about gun safes. And I thought, okay, well, let me watch this video. And it was 27 minutes long, and I thought, okay, I'll just watch the first couple minutes. And it was this guy at this store. This guy owns this safe store, specifically gun safes. And yeah, I need to do that. And anyway, he walks you around the entire store, and he says, here, let me help you understand about safes. And he shows you the doors and how the thickness is, and how this one looks thicker, but it actually has less metal. And this one looks thinner, but it actually has more metal. And then he says, here's the way that people break into safes. Here's the problems you can have with safes. And one is they can just take it away. Another is they can use these cutting devices. Another is they can use these torches. And another one is they can try to pry it. And he shows safes that have been pried and cut. And he goes through this whole description and I ended up watching the whole 27 minutes and went, wow, I don't even really have a need to buy a safe, but I know now if I buy a safe exactly what I would look for and what kind of quality that I would go after. And I totally 100% trusted that guy after watching his video for 27 minutes. Why? Because he never came to me and said, hey, I've got a great safe for you to buy. He said, here's what you need to know. Let me walk you through it. If you've got a lot of money, I would definitely go with this. If you got a medium amount of money, he described what medium and a lot and so forth was, I would go with this. If you don't have very much money, I would go at least with this. And if you go with these little cheaper ones over here, hey, these are good for keeping guns out of kids' hands. But from a security standpoint, you're just not going to get what you're paying for. Okay. This is called trusted advisor. Now, back to your business. think about how you sell, and think about helping people to understand how you've chosen to sell what you sell, what the different components are, and just helping walk them through it. Now, that's what we try to do from a marketing standpoint. It also is true from a sales standpoint. Think of yourself. Sometimes it's just helpful to set your thinking. And I mean this literally. When you sit down to write marketing, think, okay, if I were a trusted advisor, what would I want people to know? Or as you go into a sales meeting, okay, I've got to remember, I'm a trusted advisor. I'm not a salesperson. I'm a trusted advisor. In fact, we've written many phone scripts for our clients before. How to answer the phone for, say, a home improvement company. And it always says at the top of the script, remember, you are not a salesperson. You are a trusted advisor. Your job is to help the person make the best decision possible, whether or not that means buying from you. What a great mindset, trusted advisor, okay? So I think that's enough on that. Let's go on to the next concept here. Oh, actually, I have, I forgot about this. Let's go through this. True consultative selling, educate on all sides of the argument, recommend what's truly best. This is going to just sort of fill in what I just talked about. Negotiation principle number one, who has leverage? The person that has leverage is the person that is most willing to walk away from the deal. So if you walk into the deal, into the negotiation, into the marketing writing process without feeling like I have to get this sale, and you're really, truly trying to just educate, you've got a really good chance of endearing them to you, okay? Using soft language, especially when getting acquainted, maybe might potentially thinking about, so how long have you been thinking about getting a safe? Well, I really just started. Okay, well, if you did get a safe, potentially, what kinds of things would you put in it? You see how that's different than, so when are you going to buy a safe? Okay, what kind of things are you going to put into your safe? I'm thinking, well, I don't even actually have anything to put in the safe now. I haven't even purchased any guns. Soft language, okay? Next, exposed weakness. Only a person with no motive would expose their soft belly. Let me tell you what the downside is. Let me help you understand. I had a great conversation with a potential client last week where at the end of the conversation I said, look, I don't even know if this is something that we want to do. We don't have the expertise to do these kinds of things that you're asking us to do. I have expertise to do them personally, but if I turned you over to my staff is just not trained for that particular thing that you're asking for. And they went, wow, okay, I appreciate you telling me that. Now, over here on these other 5 things, absolutely we have proficiency and expertise to do those things, and it draws the customer back in, okay? Exposed weakness. Agree quickly. Agree quickly. When people want to get into an argument with you, this is what I call the Jesus principle. Jesus said, when in the way with an adversary, quickly agree with them, lest you become an enemy. And when you have an enemy, then you have conflict. So what we're looking for is points of agreement, okay? Otherwise, you're never going to have a chance to influence somebody. Next, put things in writing. People believe what they see, not what they hear. This is why marketing is so critical. Not just talking to people in a trusted advisor format, but actually influencing them in writing. Couldn't we just as easily have that same discussion about televisions? We could create a table or a chart that says, here's the 5 different levels of 50-inch TVs. Here's how they stack up in terms of picture quality and refresh rate and what refresh rate is and why it's important and the various elements that are important when it comes to televisions. Or I could do the same things with safes, right? What are the elements that have to do with safes? It has to do with what kinds of things you're putting in there, what your goal is for safety, how much cutting, what am I trying to say? How hard is it to pry open? How hard is it to cut open? How hard is it to haul off? How hard is it to install? How easy is it to get into? How quickly can you open it? And then you have the 5 or 6 different levels of safes, and you start rating them. This safe here is best for people that have a few guns that they're just not very expensive and trying to keep out of the reach of their kids. Security from thieves and so forth is not a big issue. All the way up to, they had one with, I think it was 3-inch plate steel door. It was freaking amazing. That thing must have weighed 40 billion pounds. It wasn't going anywhere. You couldn't cut through it. It was impossible. It was a breach-proof safe as much as that kind of thing is possible, and everything in between. Okay, put it in writing so people can evaluate on their own, see it, and it becomes much more believable when it's in writing. Next, this is the old quote from Lyndon B. Johnson: what convinces is conviction. Believe in the argument you're advancing. If you don't, you're dead. The other person will sense that something isn't there. No chain of reasoning, no matter how logical or elegant or brilliant, will win your case for you. This simply means you have to believe what you're saying to people. You have to believe it. If you don't believe it, they're going to sense that you don't believe it, and your credibility will be shot. Okay? Trusted advisor. Whoops. Let's go to the confirmation bias. Confirmation bias really is kind of the it's the linchpin of the whole identity concept. People are going to look for evidence to support what they already believe and ignore or minimize evidence that goes against their beliefs. And I've got the Where the Wild Things Are movie poster from, what does it say? Fall 2009. In fall 2009, my daughter was, what was she, just like 13 or 12 or something, and she wanted to go see this movie because she loves this book, Where the Wild Things Are. So I went with my wife. I took my daughter. She, like I said, she was 12 or 13 years old. And we're sitting in this movie, and I'm sitting there the entire time thinking, this has got to be the absolute worst movie I have ever seen in my life. It is just terrible. I can't even remember. I tried to purge it from my brain. It was just such a terrible movie. And I'm not a guy that gets up and leaves movies, but I would have gotten up and left this movie because it was so just stupid, except for my daughter was there, and she wanted to see it, and I brought her to see it, so I just sort of endured. And as we're walking out, I looked at her, and I'm kind of, well, what'd you think of the movie? And she just gushed how great it was. Oh, it was so good. I love this movie. It was so awesome, and this part was awesome, and I love this part here, and I love this other part. And she just couldn't stop talking about it. And I thought, wow, that was impossible that she likes this movie, apart from the fact that she's 13 years old. And the reason is, here's what I found. People, if you already believe something, if you believe you love this movie, this book, this thing, you're going to look for evidence to support that. And anything that goes against your belief, you're going to ignore it. You're going to minimize it. We see this in politics all the time. If you like a certain party, whatever they say, you like whatever the other party does, you think that they're stupid and you hate it. Okay. And this is the old story. You may have heard me tell this story before, the confirmation bias story, but it's so critical that you understand this. It's the story of the showerhead, and it goes back to a trip I took with my family several years ago now. We were in our van. We're driving across the country. We got to the point of the day where it was time to stop. We pulled over at the intersection where all the hotels are. We got out, and we looked at the Holiday Inn Express, and it looked like it was probably the cleanest, newest, most acceptable for our needs hotel. So we went in, and sure enough, they had rooms. So we started to rent a room, and as I'm going through the check-in process, I noticed next to the check-in on the counter, there's a little sign that says, "Welcome to the Holiday Inn Express, home of the Stay Smart Showerhead by Kohler." And there's a picture of a shower head. And I thought, okay, well, whatever. We check into the room. The kids start going nuts, jumping on the beds and all that kind of stuff. And I look over next to the TV, and I see another little sign that says, "Welcome to your room. At your earliest convenience, please check out the Stay Smart bathroom featuring the Stay Smart shower head by Kohler." And I think, okay, I'm game. There's two signs. I'll go check it out. So I go into the bathroom, and there on the counter is the third sign. It says, "Welcome to the Stay Smart bathroom featuring," and then it had four things. The first one was plush, oversized towels, and I looked and felt them and checked, and sure enough, they were big and they were plushy. The second thing was a bowed-out shower curtain rod, and I looked over at the shower, and there it was, bowed out, giving you a little more extra room inside the shower, so you didn't have to touch somebody else's naked on the shower curtain, which is good. Number 3 was designer toiletries, and I looked at it, and they were fancy looking, like they probably came from France or something, and I went, wow, that's really nice. And then, of course, number 4, with a photo, the Stay Smart shower head by Kohler, and I looked over at the shower, and I didn't see it because it was covered by the shower curtain. So I opened the shower curtain, and there it was. I saw it in all of its glory and splendor, the Stay Smart shower head, and here's a photo on your screen of the actual shower head, which actually had a sign hanging from the actual shower head. And I thought, I can't believe it. The 4th sign, it was telling me how great the shower head is. It has its luxurious sounding, gourmet sounding settings of, I think it was relaxing or invigorating, rejuvenating, reinvigorating. And I thought, wow, this is really amazing. I actually got in and took a shower. It was a pretty cool deal. Well, here's the point of all this shower head stuff. They took the time at the counter to point at the shower head, and then by the television to point at the shower head, and then on the counter in the bathroom to point at the shower head, and then, of course, on the actual shower head, a sign hanging from the shower head telling me how great the shower head is. This is what I call pointing at the shower head. And I would suggest to you that if you will take the time to point at the shower heads in your business, metaphorically speaking, the things that you do well, the things that you've taken time and effort to perfect and to do better than your competitors, if you will take the time to actually point at them as opposed to just letting them be, where people are more likely to not notice them, not give you credit for them, not fall in love with them because you haven't taken the time to point them out, then you're going to get a lot more credit for the things that you do well. This is called confirmation bias. It is absolutely incumbent upon you to, number one, identify the shower head, and number two, point at it continually so that people can develop a belief, and then when they see evidence of that, they will actually search out and find evidence to support that belief, and they will ignore and minimize evidence that goes against the belief about what you're telling them, okay? So you have the ability to influence the prospect's perceptions, especially in situations where they're not very familiar. You know, if they've bought something 1,000 times and they've got a good idea, maybe not so much, but ties in strongly to the trusted advisor role, the Holiday Inn Express. I'll give you an example here. LSR is Longsmith Roofing. And one of the things that we did for this company, this is going back almost 20 years ago now. By the way, I just realized, let me see something here. Oh, yeah. Tomorrow. It's tomorrow, guys. Tomorrow's the 20th anniversary of Monopolize Your Marketplace. That's pretty cool. November 19th, 1994. We did a seminar in North Dallas. We had about 30 companies come out to it. It was amazing. It was been 20 years ago tomorrow. But anyway, Longsmith Roofing was one of those clients, not from that seminar, but not that long after. And so we started trying to figure out how to point at their shower head. And one of the things we found out from this particular company, among many things that they did well, is we found that they had something called a lien release waiver. Now, here's what this means. This means if you're a roofing company, okay, you follow me? If you're a roofing company and you take a deposit from a client, then you go to the roofing material supply and you buy roofing materials. If you don't pay the bill, okay, you're with me on this? If you're the roofing company, you don't pay the roofing supplier, the roofing supplier can actually come put a lien on your house because the materials are on your house, and they can put a lien on your house even though you don't have a direct contract with that roofing supplier. You think, well, gee, that sounds weird. Well, it's true. And this company, Longsmith Roofing, was able to go to their roofing supply company and obtain a written lien release waiver. In other words, the roofing supply company says, we waive our right in writing to place a lien on any of Longsmith Roofing's houses that they do work for. And the reason they were able to obtain this lien release waiver from the roofing supplier was because they were such a big company that had such a long history of spending so much money and being so good at paying their bills that this company did not feel, the supplier did not feel the need to have that leverage over their customer, Longsmith Roofing. Well, we took that letter called lien release waiver letter, and we started showing it to the customers and say, you need to make sure that any roofer you deal with can get a lien release waiver letter from their roofing supplier. Now, this was kind of a trap. Why? Because almost no other roofing companies could actually get a lien release waiver letter. They would go to the same supply houses and say, hey, can you give me this written lien release waiver? And they'd say, no, we don't have the history that we have with Longsmith. We don't trust you like we trust Longsmith. And so they were not able to obtain, in most cases, there were a few exceptions, but for the most part, these companies couldn't get the lien release waiver letter. And this was something that we were able to hold up and point at and say, look, this is something you need to get. You've got to get this. And it allowed the customers to then start looking from other potential companies that they might do business with for something that allowed Vaughn Smith Roofing to look like a superstar. Okay? You understand how that works? This is what we want to do. We want to engage confirmation bias. All right. We're going to move on. I'm not going to go through the piano example. We've got a few more topics to cover here in a few minutes to do it. The next one is scarcity. People want things more when they believe they are less available. When they believe they're less available. So this is talking about things like limited time offers or limited quantity offers or limited capacity, exclusive products. They're available only at one place, lack of availability. Here's what we found. Fewer choices tend to be better. So let's talk through this just a little bit. Obviously, we've all seen this a lot in advertising and marketing and sales where we say, look, if you do this now, we'll give you this better deal. I've always found that if you have some sort of a rationale that goes along with the limited offer, it tends to be more believable and therefore more actionable and therefore more effective, okay? So in other words, instead of saying, hey, if you buy tonight, we will give you 10% off, it works better to say, we'll give you 10% off if you buy tonight. And the reason is because we know that there's a certain number of customers that will buy on the first time tonight, like maybe you will, and there's a certain percentage that won't. And we're happy to accommodate you if you don't, and we find that a certain percentage of customers will buy later on. But here's the problem with that. Now we've got to spend time and resources to come follow up with you, to call you, to come back, to make that happen. And that's time that we could be spending with other customers, new customers, getting new sales. And we're perfectly happy to work with you on that basis. We don't mind it at all. It's part of the normal process. However, there is a real and definitive savings to us to be able to wrap this up tonight. So if you're willing to wrap this up tonight, then we're willing to give you this additional discount. And if you're not willing to wrap it up tonight, or if you've got concerns or you want to think about it or shop, that's perfectly fine. We just want to offer this additional discount. And people hear that and they go, oh, that makes sense. Now, a couple of notes on this. I would like to encourage you as a seller of stuff to only offer limited quantities or time if you are earnest about it. I'm not a big fan of the bullcrap scarcity offer. I had a client one time that was a big fan of the bullcrap scarcity offer, and it drove me nuts. We had a TV commercial that he put together, and the TV commercial said it was to run on the 5 o'clock news, and he ran multiple commercials during the newscast. And he says, hey, we've got this special offer, whatever it was, and we're only going to allow this for the first 10 customers. And if you want to be one of the first 10, you got to do it right now. And then he'd come back in the middle of the newscast and say, okay, we've got 7 people have bought. We've only got 3 left. Oh, wait, I just received a message here. Okay, we just had another buyer, Mrs. Johnson from such and such town. So that leaves only 2. If you want to get one of the last 2 discounts, you've got to call now. And he would run this series of commercials over and over again. And he started losing credibility because people would say, how is that possible that you're doing that all the time? And it was just kind of dumb. So not a big fan of fake scarcity. That doesn't mean you can't engineer scarcity. You can say, look, we have a capacity to sell X number per month. But I just recommend that if you say we can only do X per month, that you actually only do X per month. Okay, that same customer actually had an integral side of them also. I remember we ran a sunroom sale for the month of November and December, and we said, look, we're going to sell a maximum of 15 per month, a total of 30 for the 2-month period at these reduced rates. And when they reached 30, they actually stopped, and they said, look, we've reached 30. So I recommend that. Fewer choices are better. My experience is that if you give people 30 choices, you've just bogged down their decision-making process. I think that the fewer choices you can give people is actually going to work to your advantage. So if you've got a lot of different things that you offer, here's what people want. They're counting on you to be a curator of choices for them. Remember that Best Buy example of the 5 TVs? Yeah, there's 50 different TVs on the market. We've chosen to carry these 5, and out of these 5, here's the 2 that probably are a fit for you. And I'm asking you to be a curator of options for your clients, so that instead of anything being available, you've got 2 choices, 3 choices, and then you help them narrow down which one's best for them. Okay, just think about that. This is all just psychology stuff, not really giving you specific takeaways other than think about this stuff. Authority. People want to know that you know. This goes right along with what we talked about earlier, being a consultative seller, right? Fountain from whence all knowledge flows. Put together reports, consumer reports, cliff notes, intelligence, industry intelligence reports. Make it easy and obvious to access the expertise. People want to be told what to do, and I suggest this: use command language when it's appropriate, particularly towards the end of the sales process. Command language is different than what I talked about earlier, which was soft language. Remember saying things like maybe, thinking about. Soft language is good to use at the beginning part of the discussion. Command language is good to use towards the end. Okay? If I were you, this is what I would do. This is what you need to do. If you don't do this, here's the problem that you're going to encounter. If you go with this cheaper one, here's the problems you're going to have. You need to think about this. You need to consider that, and having more of a command tone, because people at the end, when they do have trust in you, they want you to tell them what to do. Okay? This is a hard to believe principle for some people. They don't believe that people want to be bossed around, but they absolutely do, because they don't know. They're not an expert in your field. You are an expert in your field, and as long as they feel that trust and that authority, then they absolutely want you to tell them. Think about this. I got a doctor on here, right? If you went to a doctor and you had a pain in your side, and he started to look at it to try to figure out what the problem was, and he came back and said, well, this is we found that this is a cancer here. You got a cancer, and so you might want to probably treat it. And there's some different treatment options, and there's some holistic ones, and there's some surgery ones, and there's some radiation ones. Well, geez, doctor, what do I need to do? I value life. I want to live. What should I do? Well, it just kind of depends what you want to do. It's up to you. Which of those sounds best. You want the guy to say, look, based on this, and this, in your specific situation, here's what you should do. And you want somebody to tell you what to do. No different when you're trying to treat your cancer than when you're trying to choose the television for your bedroom, right? It's the same process. It's that process of authority and becoming the consumer's advocate. All right, let's move to just 2 more points, and then we'll call it a day. We'll come back and we'll reconvene next month. Low risk. People hate to put themselves at risk. We're frequently in a marketing fetal position. People are like, I don't know what to do, and so they hesitate. Make it easy to try for free if possible. Give them a chance to see the results ahead of time. You can do this with social proof. Plenty of information so they feel confident. And you'll notice this theme coming up over and over and over again. It's called facilitating the decision-making process, helping people understand what's involved, what's important, what to look for, what to understand, what to know, what to do. And then once they have that information, then the risk goes down, okay? Risk is high when people lack information. They may not read all the information that you give them, but give it to them anyway. This is why we recommend having hundreds of online reviews on your website and dozens, if possible, of client case studies so people can see it. They might not read it all, but they at least feel comfortable knowing that it's there. So it's just an opportunity to lower the risk. And this is the last one we're going to cover today, something for nothing. And here's what I found, that people inherently want something for nothing. This is sort of a human nature thing. And we can cater to this to an extent in marketing. Here's some ideas. Packaging strategies. I'm not talking about the cardboard and plastic that you put on something. I'm talking about the way that you put things together to sell in groups, okay? Pull something out that used to be included and assign a value to it, okay? So you might pull the installation of Windows out and then include installation for free and tell people that you're going to give them free installation if they buy these windows. Well, they don't know how much windows cost. They don't know how much installation costs. But if you tell them it's free, packaging it as something that's free, that may have a positive impact. Now, don't take that at face value and run and do it exactly like I just said. You need to think about this and make sure that for your situation it's appropriate. Okay? Offer to get them for free with the purchase. What kind of freebies can you include? Can you add things on that will be extra? If you buy it today, we'll give you these extra things. Okay? We put together what we call mega irresistible offers. You remember me talking about a sunroom offer that we put together for a guy, and he sold 15 per month, 30 for the 2 months. We put together a mega irresistible offer for sunrooms for those 2 months. Mega irresistible means we put so many components into the offer that it was mega irresistible. People just couldn't say no. It started by giving them a bona fide 20% off. Then we added on to that 3 coupons that they could choose to activate 2 of for free flooring or for free furniture or for free, I can't remember what it was, something else that would go into the sunroom. And on top of that, we gave them a free heat-cooled unit so they could regulate the temperature. And on top of that, we gave them a free trip for 2 to any one of 21 locations. So we had all these different things if you buy during the month of November or December. If you wait till January, all of these bonuses go away. I mean, you're familiar with this kind of thing. And yeah, it can come off cheesy, and yeah, it can come off a little bit hokey if you don't present it properly, but you can also make these things so that they come across as valid and legitimate, okay? And there's an innovation formula that we use called free lunch. You know, what can we add for free? How can we use the word free? What can we do that we can add on top of the offer? What can we pull out of the offer and then give it back to them for free that makes this seem more irresistible? You know, this is not much different than what companies like BMW do, right? If you buy this BMW, we include all maintenance for 4 years for free, including oil changes and filters and wiper blades and whatever is included. I'm actually not sure. But it just enhances the value that you get there. So that's what we have today. We've got some more strategies for you next month. We're going to talk about accelerated discontentment, frame of reference conditioning, logic versus emotion, don't talk to strangers, one of my favorites, anticipated reaction, and then a couple bonus topics. If you have any questions right now, I'd be happy to address them if you would just type them into your console. We have a actually surprisingly large group today. Thank you for attending. I appreciate you being here today. But if you have any questions, go ahead and ask them via the console, and I'll address them. If you don't, then we'll be done. It's up to you. While we're waiting, would like to say hello to Brian Zimmerman from Zen Windows, one of our newest MYM insiders. Glad to have you on here today. Actually, I just looked at your first draft of your identity, and it looked pretty good. I'm going to suggest a couple minor edits to it, so we'll get that to you pretty quick. But yeah, looking pretty good. Alex, how you doing? Good to see you on here. Be talking to you soon. Chase, good to see you. I haven't talked to you in a while, but it's good to see you lurking about. Several others. Jack, haven't talked to you in a while. I bet you're cold right now because you live in a cold area. As always, Rich. Hey, Ross, good to see you. Stuart, Mike, good to have all you guys on here today. Several others. I won't go through them all, but let's see. I think I have a question, maybe just a comment. If not, we'll go ahead and end up here. Let's see. Oh, just hey, Rich. Hey. Okay, that's it. I don't think we have any questions. So we'll talk to you not next week. Next week is our Thanksgiving week. I would encourage you next Tuesday. I've got a very special Thanksgiving blog posting coming out. So look for that on your email or go to our website and check that out next week on Tuesday. It's sort of my annual Thanksgiving message. Spent a lot of time and effort into thinking this through. It's a little bit funny, but it's mostly good. So read that next week. And other than that, we'll be back the week after. What is a good way, here's a question, what is a good way to avoid being manipulated by customers who think dealing with us is a sport? You know, this is interesting, Alex. We're talking about this in reference to your website, putting some expectations of, this is really getting into a topic for next month. If you look on here, it says frame of reference conditioning. This also has to do with price conditioning, helping people understand what the prices should be. once you do this on your website, and then you can back it up verbally when you're talking to people, you let them know right up front that there's really no room for negotiation. And if they don't like that, then they're welcome to go somewhere else. You can present this in a way that's not offensive, and it's not, hey, well, if you don't like it, then you jump in a lake. You don't say it like that, obviously, but you can set it up that way. I deal with this all the time when I'm negotiating with media. And you can very quickly tell when you're calling a TV or a radio station what their availability is. In other words, if they have very little inventory, they have no motivation to negotiate with you, right? But if they have a lot of open inventory, then they have a lot of ability to negotiate. And guys like me can sense that within, I was going to say 30 seconds, within 10 seconds of talking to a sales rep. And I'll give you a good example. There's a particular TV station that we buy, and it's the biggest station in that market, and it's more expensive than the other stations in the market. And I've tried to negotiate with them, and their attitude is always, look, this is our prices. And they haven't ever said this to me, but this is the very well understood implication. If you don't like the prices, then just don't buy from us. We've got plenty of other people that will. We don't need you. And they've never been rude, and they've never used that language, but it's been made clear by the way that they treat their prices, which is, well, that's the prices. Well, can you do any better? Well, no, we can't. Well, what if we added this and this and this? That's not going to make a difference. So I think it's just a matter of putting it out there in writing and in vibe that, you don't play those kinds of games, but you have to give them a rationale, right? It can't just be, well, hey, we're not going to play games. You got to say, look, here's who we are. This is our expertise. This is what we do. Alex, I'm talking to you. And setting boundaries is what you just said on your comment. I think that's totally accurate. And I like that phrase because it's akin to raising kids and setting boundaries with kids. And if you don't set boundaries, they'll run all over you. But if you do, right, they know. So that's really it. Thanks, Alex. Thanks, everybody else, for being on the webinar today. And I'll be back with you in a couple weeks. Until then, have a great Thanksgiving. Bye now.